I have heard enough. Punish them all.
King Yi Seon had spent 20 years destroying the people he believed had murdered his family, and on the morning his final enemy was brought before him, he believed his revenge was finally complete. General Kang Dae-hyun knelt in the execution courtyard with his hands bound behind his back. Once, the Kang clan had commanded one of the strongest armies in Joseon. Now their estates were gone, their soldiers scattered, and nearly everyone Yi Seon considered responsible for his family's deaths had already been imprisoned or executed. It had all begun when Yi Seon was 5 years old. A fire had swept through his mother's palace, killing his mother, his older brother, and dozens of servants. Evidence had pointed toward the Kang clan, and afterward, Yi Seon's uncle, Prince Yi Seon, had taken the frightened child into his home. Yi Seon had raised him with one lesson above all others: never forget what the Kang family took from you. Yi Seon never did. When he became king, revenge became his justice. Now only General Kang remained. Yi Seon looked down at him. Do you have anything to say before you die? Dae-hyun slowly raised his head. We didn't murder your family. Yi Seon's expression hardened. He had heard those words before, but Dae-hyun continued. Your mother discovered someone was planning to remove your brother from succession. She asked my family to protect you. The soldiers who attacked her palace wore our insignia because someone wanted one frightened little boy to remember exactly whom he was supposed to hate. Yi Seon froze. Dae-hyun looked directly into his eyes. You slaughtered the only people who ever tried to save you. Yi Seon still gave the order. The sword fell, but that night, the king entered the sealed royal archives alone. Before sunrise, he discovered that the military orders supposedly signed by the Kang clan had been forged. Witnesses had been paid using money connected to Prince Yi Seon. Then Yi Seon found a letter written by his mother shortly before her death. She had discovered Yi Seon's conspiracy. She had asked the Kang family for help. Yi Seon sat surrounded by the evidence until morning. His uncle had murdered his family, framed the Kangs, taken in the surviving 5-year-old prince, and spent years teaching that child whom to blame. And Yi Seon had done exactly what his uncle wanted. He had destroyed every family powerful enough to oppose him. For 20 years, Yi Seon had called it justice. Now he finally understood. It had been murder. He immediately ordered Prince Yi Seon's arrest. His guards never arrived. That night, an assassin entered the king's chambers. As Yi Seon collapsed beside his bed with blood spreading across his robes, he understood the final part of his uncle's plan. The puppet had discovered the truth, so the puppet had to die. Yi Seon closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he believed death was exactly what he deserved. Then he opened his eyes again. Sunlight poured through an unfamiliar window. Yi Seon tried to rise, but his hands were tiny and his arms were far too short. Before he could understand what was happening, the door opened. A man hurried inside. Yi Seon's blood ran cold. General Kang Dae-hyun. Alive. Before Yi Seon could move, Dae-hyun lifted him into his arms. There you are. Your mother has been looking everywhere for you. Yi Seon stared at the man he had ordered executed. Put me down. Dae-hyun laughed. Then a woman entered, kissed Yi Seon's forehead, and gently scolded her husband for carrying their son around when he should have been getting dressed. Memories that did not belong to Yi Seon began flooding his mind. His name was Kang Min-jae. He was 5 years old. Lady Soo-jin was his mother. General Kang Dae-hyun was his father. And somehow, King Yi Seon had been reborn as the youngest son of the man he had executed. During his first weeks inside the Kang household, Yi Seon kept waiting to discover the monsters he had spent his previous life hating. Instead, he discovered a family. His new mother, Lady Soo-jin, checked his blankets every night because Min-jae had a habit of kicking them away while sleeping. His older sister secretly slipped him pieces of honey candy whenever their mother wasn't looking, while his older brother followed him around insisting that a 5-year-old needed someone to protect him. General Kang Dae-hyun was the hardest of all to understand. The man was patient, affectionate, and completely unashamed of loving his children. Whenever Dae-hyun lifted Min-jae onto his shoulders or carried him to bed after he fell asleep somewhere in the house, Yi Seon remembered the execution order bearing his royal seal. One evening, he found Evian sitting outside repairing Min-jae's broken wooden sword. You could buy another one, Yi Seon said. Evian smiled without looking up. You cried when this one broke. I did not. You cried terribly. Yi Seon frowned, making his father laugh. As Evian continued repairing the little sword, he explained that something did not become worthless simply because it was broken. Yi Seon quietly looked away. He wondered what this man would say if he knew that the child sitting beside him had once destroyed his entire family. The thought frightened him enough that he never asked. As the months passed, Yi Seon eventually realized exactly how far into the past he had returned. He was 5 years old as Kang Min-jae, but somewhere inside the royal palace, another 5-year-old boy was alive as well, Prince Yi Seon, his original self. The palace fire had not happened yet, which meant his mother was still alive, his older brother was still alive, and Prince Yi Seon had not yet succeeded in destroying their family. Yi Seon knew exactly what would happen if he did nothing. He also understood that saving the Kang family would not be enough. The little prince inside the palace would still lose everything, still be taken in by his uncle, and still grow into the king Yi Seon remembered becoming. For the first time since his rebirth, Yi Seon found himself wondering whether his younger self deserved to be saved at all. He remembered every execution he had ordered and every family he had destroyed. If the 5-year-old prince died in the palace fire, perhaps hundreds of innocent people would live. Then, one night, Min-jae woke from a nightmare screaming. Lady Sujin rushed into his room, gathered him into her arms, and held him until his breathing calmed. "You are safe," she whispered. "Whatever frightened you is gone." Long after she left, Yi Seon remained awake. He remembered another 5-year-old boy waking after the palace fire and screaming for his mother. He remembered Prince Yi Seon telling him to stop crying because princes were not supposed to cry. For the first time, Yi Seon stopped remembering only the tyrant he eventually became and remembered the child who existed before him. That child had not executed anyone. He had not destroyed a family or condemned an innocent person, not yet. Yi Seon finally understood that if he allowed the boy to die because of crimes he had not committed, then he would simply be repeating the same cruelty that had defined his first life. He would save Prince Yi Seon too, not because the tyrant deserved another chance, but because the frightened 5-year-old boy had not become that tyrant yet. Soon afterward, General Kang received a secret message from the queen. The moment Yi Seon saw the sealed letter, he knew the conspiracy had begun. That night, he entered his father's study. Dae-hyun looked up from his desk. "Min-jae, you should be asleep." Yi Seon climbed onto the chair opposite him. "If the queen asks you to send soldiers to the palace, don't let them wear the Kang insignia." Dae-hyun's expression immediately changed. "What did you say?" "Someone wants everyone to believe our family attacked the queen." The room became silent. Dae-hyun slowly placed the letter on his desk and looked at his 5-year-old son with an expression Yi Seon had never seen before. "How do you know about the queen?" There was no truthful answer Yi Seon could give him. "I can't explain." "Min-jae." Yi Seon lowered his head, afraid that this might be the moment when the warmth in his father's eyes disappeared. Instead, Dae-hyun came around the desk and knelt in front of him. "Then answer one question. Is our family in danger?" Yi Seon looked into the eyes of the man he had once executed. "Yes." Dae-hyun studied him for several seconds before nodding. "Then that's enough." The simple answer almost brought Yi Seon to tears. He had spent his first life surrounded by people who claimed to love him while carefully manipulating everything he believed. Now he had told a man something almost impossible, and Dae-hyun had chosen to trust him without demanding that he prove himself first. The general immediately changed his plans. Instead of sending soldiers openly, he entered the palace secretly and met with the queen. Together, they began gathering evidence against Prince Yi Seon. But Yi Seon soon realized something had changed. Instead of abandoning his plan, he moved the palace attack forward. The fire began during a royal banquet. From the Kang estate, Yi Seon saw smoke rising above the palace walls and knew immediately what was happening. Dae-hyun was already mounting his horse when Yi Seon ran toward him. "Father, take me with you." "No, I know where they'll be." Dae-hyun hesitated, but there was no time to argue. He lifted Min-jae onto the horse and rode toward the palace. By the time they arrived, flames were spreading through the queen's residence. Yi Seon remembered every corridor. He remembered where his older brother had fallen, the chamber where his mother had died, and the doorway where a terrified 5-year-old prince had waited for someone to rescue him. This time, Kang's soldiers entered the palace without family insignia, while Dae-hyun fought his way toward the queen. Yi Seon ran toward the eastern corridor. There, beneath a table surrounded by smoke, he found himself. Prince Yi Seon was curled into a ball, crying for his mother. Min-jae stopped. For several seconds, he simply stared at the frightened little boy, who, in another history, would become one of the cruelest kings the kingdom had ever known. Yet looking at him now, Yi Seon could not find the hatred he expected. He felt only grief. Min-jae knelt beside the table. The little prince looked at him through tear-filled eyes. "My mother. She's alive," Min-jae told him. "I can't find her." Min-jae held out his hand. "Then come with me." The prince hesitated. Yi Seon remembered all the people who had once offered him help, and how his uncle had eventually taught him that trusting another person was weakness. This time, Min-jae did not force him. He simply waited. A moment later, the little prince slowly reached out and took his hand. Together, they escaped the burning palace. The queen survived that night, and so did the crown prince. Most importantly, Prince Yi Seon's plan failed before he could control the story of what had happened. Several of his men were captured carrying forged Kang insignia, while documents seized from his residence revealed payments to assassins, palace servants, and corrupt officials. Prince Yi Seon was arrested before sunrise. The kingdom never experienced the terrible purge Yi Seon remembered. The Kang clan was never branded traitorous, and hundreds of families that had once disappeared during his reign continued living ordinary lives, never knowing how close history had come to destroying them. Prince Yi Seon never went to live with his uncle either. He remained with his mother and his older brother. Min-jae saw him occasionally after that, and over time, the two boys became unlikely friends. Prince Yi Seon was impatient, competitive, and absolutely hated losing, but he was also surprisingly kind. Yi Seon slowly stopped thinking of himself by his old name. He became Min-jae. General Kang became his father, Lady Soo-jin became his mother, and the children who had once felt like strangers became his brother and sister. The Kang household was no longer the home of his enemy. It was simply home. The memories of his first life never disappeared, but Min-jae stopped wishing they would. He needed those memories because they reminded him of the kind of man he never wanted to become again. One spring afternoon, Min-jae stood beside his father watching soldiers train. Dae-hyun handed him the wooden sword he had repaired years earlier. Min-jae smiled. "You still kept this. You loved that thing. I was 5. You cried when it broke. I still deny that." Dae-hyun laughed, and Min-jae found himself laughing with him. For a moment, however, the old execution courtyard returned to his memory. He remembered this man kneeling before him with his hands bound, and he remembered giving the order that ended his life. For years, Min-jae had wondered whether he should confess everything. In the end, he never did. There was no confession large enough to return the lives he had taken in another history, and there was no reason to place the weight of a life that no longer existed upon people who had done nothing wrong. Instead, Min-jae chose to spend this life protecting what he had once destroyed. Many years later, Prince Yi Seon became king. He was nothing like the ruler Min-jae remembered. He listened before judging, questioned accusations that seemed too convenient, and refused to condemn entire families for the crimes of one person. Standing among the royal guards, Min-jae quietly lowered his eyes. Those were words the first Yi Seon had learned far too late. After the court emptied, the king asked Min-jae to remain behind. "Do you remember the night we met?" Yi Seon asked. Min-jae smiled. "I remember. I've always wondered why you came looking for me. Perhaps I knew you needed someone." The king laughed. "I was hiding under a table. You were very brave under that table. I was 5. So was I." For a moment, they looked at each other before laughing together. Min-jae eventually left the throne room and found his father waiting outside. General Kang Dae-hyun was much older now. Silver had begun appearing in his hair, and his movements were slower than they had once been. Yet he was alive. Even after all those years, that simple fact sometimes stopped Min-jae in his tracks. Dae-hyun glanced at him. "Are you coming home?" Min-jae smiled and nodded. "Yes, father." They walked away from the throne room together. In his first life, Yi Seon had believed revenge would heal the frightened child he had once been. Instead, he had fed that child's pain until it became powerful enough to destroy everyone around him. His second life taught him something far more difficult. Pain could explain what a person became, but it could not excuse everything they chose afterward. In return, he devoted his second life to protecting the family he had once destroyed. Yet the person he had struggled hardest to save had not been General Kang. It was the frightened 5-year-old boy hiding beneath a table in a burning palace. This time, instead of teaching the child whom to blame, he simply held out his hand and led him out of the fire.